If you were at this conference here last year, you might remember there was some startling news about our ability to trade UK grains and cereals into Europe. This was an issue about access to all markets, and a report written in 2010, and that report was written to reflect the greenhouse gas emissions from regional cultivations of crops in the UK. Lots of people weren't happy with this report. And the HGCA, us, we decided to investigate further. Now, to be honest, this actually ended up being slightly more work than we anticipated. But we were able to get the industry to work together. There's a few acronyms here. And we managed to get the NFU, AIC, REA, SCOPA, GAFTA, DEFRA, and DFT, Department of Transport, all to work together to rework and rewrite the report. Our aim was to try and improve the approach of the report and to reflect the UK arable industry better in context, to get the calculations, to get the data right, and I do emphasise this, not just to change the end results. This was the situation for rape, and as you can see, actually, the before map on your left is slightly different to the one that was actually presented last year. The situation was actually even worse than presented last year. Of the 35 regions in the UK, only 3 were acceptable under the Commission's disaggregated default for cultivations. But by the time we've worked through the report, tweaked a few things, and when I say tweaked, I mean getting more robust data, updating some of the yield information, making sure the calculations were based on good, robust evidence. The situation's kind of changed now. So we've got most of the UK is all turned green. So those regions can now use this default figure to represent the emissions from the cultivations of crops in those areas. For wheat, there's been less of a change. But it's not a bad thing. It just means the original report was actually not bad on that aspect. The most significant area there is bringing Northern Ireland into the green zone. I haven't got a map for sugar beet because this is the HGCA, but sugar beet was actually quite an instrumental part of the report as well. And of the sugar beet regions, not one of the regions met the default target by the Commission, and now they all do. So red areas have gone green, and particularly for rape, because there are still some areas which are red, they still don't meet the default. But you can see that of the UK production, more than 90% of the UK rape production actually meets those default, the disaggregated default for cultivation. This situation is not just it's not just about biofuels, it's about access to all markets. And the issue was, if you were selling your grain or seed into Europe and you didn't meet the emissions criteria, then traders buying there were threatening to discount the price of wheat. And this had a huge knock-on effect to the profitability of those crops. And across Europe, 60% of the rape crop is used for biofuel. So it's a significant portion. But even if you are a grower or representing growers in one of the red zones, that doesn't mean that you can't sell into that supply chain. It just means that you can't use the default from that report. And as of the 1st of April this next year, you have to either use the default from the report or have farm level data. So if you're in one of the red regions, it's not that you can't trade into those supply chains. It just means you have to have the farm level data to back it up. Which brings me back to the original question posed, why should you care about carbon? Well, the answer is twofold, really. One, because growers are increasingly asking about carbon. What do they need to know? And will it affect them? And one, if they are interested or they are supplying into that supply chain, then there's an obvious answer. They need to be aware. But two, there is a strong correlation between those farms who have lower carbon footprints and those and are the same farms which have got the highest gross margin for those crops as well. So at the HGCA, we've been doing a little more work on your behalf, and today we're launching a publication and a new tool looking at carbon footprinting of cereals and oilseeds. And this is primarily to try and explain to growers and agronomists what the carbon footprinting is about, not only to get a carbon footprint figure at the end of it, but also what elements of the crop management actually affect that carbon footprint. And this allows you to sort of consider changes to crop management or use of different nitrogen fertilizers or biosolids or whatever else, and see how that will impact on your carbon footprint. So my colleague Shamal is somewhere out there in the darkness, and we'll be demonstrating the tool in the main area. There is the guide which explains carbon footprinting, and then there is the decision support tool, which is necessary to sort of illustrate what you're talking about. You need to be able to play with the tool to be able to change the figures and see what impact it has. And other than that, thank you very much.